Video games are supposed to be fun. In most games, players can choose the difficulty level they're most comfortable with. Sometimes grinding through super hard levels is the way to go. Other times, players want to relax with a seemingly easy game. Playing an easy game can be a lot of fun until a player ends up in a super hard level, which seems completely out of place. Before we get into this list, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to keep up with fresh content from the gamer. Here are 10 super hard levels in easy games. Pilot School. The Grand Theft Auto series may not be the easiest game on this list, but it's certainly not so difficult that it's likely to send players into rage quit mode. Typically, there are two methods of play amongst Grand Theft Auto players. A player either wants to spend their time running around in this open world committing crimes while forgetting about the story mode, or the player is determined to complete every aspect of the storyline. For players who are intent on finishing every part of the story mode, the Pilot School mission in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas can be an infuriating end to their well-laid plans. This is not an optional mission. Players must complete 10 lessons with a bronze medal, at the very least, in order to continue the storyline. While it may seem as though completing flight training should be somewhat easy, it isn't. The controls for flying vehicles tends to be clunky and not as intuitive as a player would think. When flight was introduced to the series, it was a welcome addition right up until players came across Pilot School. Thankfully, the Grand Theft Auto franchise continued to improve on the in-game flight mechanisms. Underwater Dam. The Nintendo Entertainment System is one of the most iconic gaming consoles of all time. During its heyday, the system saw numerous games, some of which are still popular to this day. Another aspect of the NES was its ability to push out tie-in titles with popular characters from cartoons. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES was one such game. With the popularity of the cartoon, it only made sense to release a game for the same title for fans. The game itself was simple enough and appeared to be in a similar style to other popular side-scrollers at the time. Players could play as one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and navigate their way through foot soldier battles. Issues with gameplay, however, stemmed from the underwater dam level. Much like underwater levels in other franchises, players were expected to control one of the turtles underwater in order to defuse bombs. Simple enough, in theory, but the developers decided to add an extra difficulty level by throwing in some electrified seaweed and other deadly traps. To make matters worse, they decided to put a time limit on the level. With only 2 minutes and 20 seconds to disarm the bombs, even a skilled gamer would have difficulty beating this level. Turbo Tunnel. While popular, the Nintendo Entertainment System did have a long way to go when it was first released in regards to making games playable. Ask any gamer and they're sure to name a few titles available on the early system which nearly made them quit gaming forever. Battletoads, while seemingly created for children, would probably be on that list. This game makes the list for sheer fact that it's misleading. A game intended for children should not be too difficult to play. While the majority of the game is somewhat difficult, there is one level which stands out from the rest, and it's only the third level of the game. In the Turbo Tunnel level, players must ride a vehicle across a side-scrolling landscape. While it seems easy enough in theory, it is anything but simple. The game throws obstacle after obstacle at players which they must navigate in order to beat the level. To make matters even worse, the speed at which players are traveling is ridiculously fast, so obstacles seemingly pop out of nowhere. If the game is this difficult on level 3, it can only get worse from there. Eggmanland. Sonic the Hedgehog has gained popularity since the first installment's release in 1991 on the Sega Genesis. Since then, the Speedy Hedgehog has made appearances in numerous titles across different consoles. The games themselves are typically easy to play and fun for gamers of all ages. Who doesn't love hedgehogs? Sonic Unleashed was released to eager fans in 2008, and players assumed they would end up with a gameplay similar to older titles. For the most part, the game is an updated version of the type of gameplay fans of the franchise have grown to love. That is, until they encounter Eggmanland. In this level, it appears as though the developers wanted to ramp everything up. On the PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360, the level had one long, seemingly unending act. To make things even more difficult, there are time trials which stretch on forever, but the clock should be the least of the player's worries. During this level, the most important thing is not dying and setting gameplay back. Try to think of this level as an evil version of Disneyland, where players must run through every attraction as fast as possible without ever getting a break. That's Eggmanland in a nutshell. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out is another iconic game pretty much every gamer has at least heard of. From the Mario look-alike referee to the annoying King Hippo, this game has earned its spot on the list of iconic games. The game itself isn't too hard overall. There may be a few times where a player can be uncertain whether or not Little Mac can get through the next round, but it's never a dire matter. Even if Piston Honda is wiping the floor with Little Mac, players usually get through it in order to get their dream fight. During the Dream Fight, players are pitted against Mike Tyson, also known as Mr. Dream in some instances. However, he's more like Mr. Nightmare when confronted in the ring. While Little Mac has trained hard to get to the top, Mike Tyson is several steps ahead. He comes packing one-hit knockdown uppercuts right away that, even while blocked with full health, do substantial damage to Little Mac. If a player can dodge those first damaging punches, they may stand a chance. However, Tyson's lightning jabs may be too much for Little Mac to handle, and if he's not careful, players might find themselves knocked out. Ouch! The Great Maze. The Super Smash Bros. Franchise has quite the cult following, and for good reason. The game features numerous crossover characters which happen to be a long-standing fan favorites. It's also a fairly easy game to get into, even though there's a huge competitive atmosphere at higher levels of play. What gamer hasn't wondered what would happen if Mario were pitted against Kirby in a fistfight? While most of the levels are fun and fairly easy, there is one level even skilled brawlers are hard-pressed to beat. In Super Smash Bros. Brawl, a maze awaits players. In the maze, players have to open doors and defeat the enemies behind those doors. While it seems simple enough considering that, in order to get to this point, players will have to beat a lot of opponents, it's just not the case. Some of these enemies are subspatial clones of enemies they've already battled. Players must also beat all the bosses again with the exception of Crazy Hand and Master Hand. If that's not enough work, players also have to beat Taboo. Thankfully, Sonic comes to the rescue and beats Taboo's wings to pieces and weakens his power. The main reason this level is difficult, however, is due to the amount of time it takes to get to the Taboo battle. Blood Trail. Max Payne is a standard third-person shooter, so there's some level of difficulty to be expected. The game itself is a little bit darker than the other games on this list, but overall, the gameplay isn't any more difficult than a similar game in the same genre. The game follows the title character, Max Payne, as he attempts to find the people responsible for killing his wife and child. That alone should be unsettling enough, but the developers went above and beyond to ensure the game is as creepy as possible. The nightmare levels of Max Payne are as terrifying as they sound and, on top of it, somewhat difficult. In order to continue the storyline, Max Payne must navigate through dark and gloomy hallways in order to reach a room. The issue here lies in the fact that he must follow a poorly lit blood trail to do so. The trail often seems to disappear and it's hard to see in the darkness. Players can also easily get lost or lose sight of the trail, which makes it difficult to get to the right room. To top off this nightmarish hellscape, a strange and almost ghostly baby cries in the background. Given that Max is searching for the people who murdered his wife and child, this is even more unsettling. Slippery Climb. Platform games such as Crash Bandicoot are generally loved by most gamers. They're fun, pretty easy, and generally have a decent storyline to keep gamers occupied for hours. When it was released in 1996, gamers of all ages were eager to play. The game itself was fairly simple to play, and the controls are easy for gamers to learn, which is why it's become a fan favorite over the years. Players navigate the world of Woompa Island as Crash, who is regularly antagonized by Dr. Neo Cortex. The levels in the game are fairly straightforward. The game is, after all, intended for children, so a high level of difficulty wouldn't be appropriate. However, when players get to the Slippery Climb level, gameplay becomes almost impossible. In the Slippery Climb level, players are expected to navigate the exceedingly difficult exterior of Cortex Castle. Numerous traps and difficult jumps are awaiting players in this level. Moving platforms and enemies also do their best to ensure Crash does not complete the level. If a player manages to break all of the crates without dying, they can retrieve the red gem for this level. But such a high difficulty, is it even worth it? To add to the difficulty, there's only one checkpoint box in the whole level. Good luck. Tubular. When it comes to easy, family-friendly games, any game in the Mario franchise usually comes to mind. As far as side-scrollers go, it's a million times easier than Contra. The enemies aren't terribly dangerous, and players can easily collect green or red mushrooms to increase their chances of beating a level. There are two types of levels, however, which some players may find difficult. Castle levels are usually harder than regular levels, as there are numerous enemies and lava to contend with. Sky levels are difficult due to the fact that one fall will quickly do in all of a player's hard work. In Super Mario World, one of the worst sky levels is Tubular. As usual, players must navigate Mario through the sky level without falling to their death. Typically, sky levels are not terrible to get through, but in Tubular, players are expected to get through a level in only 300 seconds. There is no secret exit. Making matters worse is the way Mario must navigate this level. Instead of simply jumping across tubes and Koopa shells, players must have to hit balloons in order to float across large gaps with no end in sight. There are, of course, several well-placed charge and chucks to raise the difficulty level. If a player misses one power balloon, they're as good as gone. Oh no! The Water Temple. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is one of the most popular games in the franchise. Released in 1999, fans of the series were ready to delve into another adventure with Link. The game itself was met with critical acclaim and has since become another iconic Nintendo game. Taking place before A Link to the Past, the gameplay is similar to other titles in the franchise. Players can expect the same type of storyline and combat as previous games. The game itself definitely met fans' expectations. Unfortunately, some players may have had their enjoyment crushed when they hit the 6th dungeon. Known as the Water Temple, this level is so difficult that creator Shigeru Miyamoto says he has been gripped with guilt over 10 years due to the negative reception of this level. The level itself consists of a maze of chambers on 5 different floors, which are only accessible by achieving certain water levels. Players must navigate the maze and pull the correct levers in order to gain access to certain parts of the maze. If that's not irritating enough, players must also wear and remove their iron boots a ridiculous amount of times throughout the level. The grand prize for making it through the Water Temple is the long shot, so players should decide whether or not the torture is even worth it. Did we forget any super hard levels? Which easy game nearly made you rage quit? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to click the subscribe button so you can watch more videos from our playlist. Thanks for watching.